Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leading People podcast. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Christina Lewis. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Meeta. How are you?
Really well, thank you. And thanks for joining for this episode. For everyone watching, Christina has many years, over 12 years as a people leader. And Christina is a huge advocate of women in leadership and is also a working mum and is a big advocate of diversity and inclusion. So we've got a lot to cover today, Christina.
We have indeed. Yeah, I'll do my best.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for your time. You do so much, and for you to be able to take the time out for us to share with our community what you do and how you've done it is so appreciated.
Oh, no problem at all. It's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. And tell me, Christina, when we did a little sort of briefing call quite a few weeks ago now, you spoke about your journey, and you spoke about how you started your career and things happen like motherhood, like meeting people along your way that drove your journey. So tell me when it started for you. When did you know who you were going to be and what you wanted to do in life?
Yeah, well, I'm probably still figuring a little bit of that out, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I sort of started off my career in recruitment, actually,
Right.
and then subsequently, sorry, my doorbell is going. But and then subsequently, I then decided that I wanted to work in HR. And I wanted to work in the charity sector, and HR seemed the obvious pathway. So
Yeah.
I literally went into an organisation that was very much focused on international development, but I went in at the grassroots level, so as an assistant, and through that organisation I was there for a while actually, and they sponsored me through all my CIPD, my CPD, all that kind of jazz. And I worked with an absolutely phenomenal HR director, and I basically just learned so much from her. But it was quite a traditional organisation. The HR function was quite traditional. It was global, so it was really interesting. And I was pretty much a generalist, which is what I am now, really. And then I fell pregnant with my first daughter. I mean, the timing was perfect. I just completed my CIPD. I'd been promoted and worked as an HR business partner for a while, and then I subsequently got pregnant and obviously had my first baby. And to be honest, I really thought that, you know what, I'm just going to love being a mum, and I will probably work part-time, and but my sole focus will be my baby. And we just moved house, everything was kind of perfect.
You had this vision and it was all falling into place. And it's really interesting that you said that the timing was perfect, because I remember when I was thinking about my motherhood journey in my career, I always said I wanted to get my qualifications, my financial qualifications under my belt before I had a family. And I had this mindset that if I stepped away from my career to become a mum, that whilst I'm away, my career will slide back. And it's something that we'll talk about later, about women in business and women in leadership, but we shouldn't have to feel that way, So
oh gosh, yeah, exactly. But to be honest, at that stage, I just wasn't really worried. I was so focused on having my baby and being a mum. And anyway, it happened, and she came along, and it was lovely. But as the time went on, as much as I kind of enjoyed being with her and all of that, I just kind of felt that I really, really wanted to get back to work. I kind of realised how big a part of my identity my job was. Amazing. And almost to the point where, like, my husband would go to work in the morning and I kind of resented him. Exactly. And so, I took my maternity leave and I returned on a part-time basis.
What was part-time for you?
Well, it was 4 days a week.
That's not part-time, is it, actually? It's a 5-day week in 4 days.
But to be honest, I didn't really, if I'm speaking really honestly, I probably didn't value that 5th day as much as I thought I would.
And I really appreciate that you said you're being completely honest, because part of the promise of this podcast is about being candid, because so many things are out there where they're glossy and people say what they think they should say. And I'm hoping that we can bring true reality, true grit, and what the tough sides of a career path, and how we decide who we want to be in our journey, and how we find our voice, you know, because, and it's really interesting. When did you know you had, because I had to go back to work, from a financial perspective, and also I knew I was career driven. But when did you know that being a mum needed to be alongside having a career, and being a mum wasn't just what you were going to do? How soon after she was born?
I don't know, you know, probably sort of once you get out of that 3-month fourth trimester, you know,
almost
crazy bubble. I don't know how to put it.
No, it's like frontline war. You're literally born, and it's very intense. First time mum.
It's really intense, and we're so under pressure to be back in our skinny jeans, aren't we? And just you know, be exactly the same person who you were prior to having a baby. So I think it was around that point, and then obviously I took a lot longer off, and then I went back to work. But what really sort of, it was like a fire had started within me, as I just thought, this job is fine, but it's not enough. I need to be doing more. And actually kind of having my daughter gave me that motivation. And then along came the role at Restless Development, which is where I am now. And at the time it was a head of people and performance, and it was a comprehensive step up into quite a different type of organisation, much more sort of leaner in terms of their resourcing, much more dynamic in terms of their approach, and just a lot more, I think, commercial in the way they work, sort of high pace, lots of work. And lots of kind of opportunity to be autonomous and creative. Like Restless Development isn't somewhere where you can hide in the system. We want people
yourself to work.
Exactly. And so I applied for this role and subsequently got it. And then I think that moment, you know, it was a real time where I was really able to find myself professionally and discover what it is that I really wanted to do. And as my time went on there, I had another baby as well.
Fantastic.
I saw that, you know, I think so often we look at structures in organisations and we kind of think, okay, there isn't a really obvious role above me. What do I do? Do I leave? Or, you know, is there no opportunity? But I felt that I was able to kind of create that opportunity. And so I really wanted to be a people director. But there wasn't one in the organogram, not at that moment in time. And so I really tried to become quite indispensable. I used to like show up in leadership meetings that I wasn't always invited to, but once I was there, people were happy to have me there. I really wanted to get an understanding of governance and the board. And so I took the minutes in the board meeting that, you know, nobody really wanted to do that, but it just meant that I was present. And so kind of...
I just want to stop you there for a minute.
Yeah, of course.
Something you've done, which to you just sounds like, oh no, I just did that. Actually, for someone looking in, that is a huge step that somebody else might be thinking, I don't know how to take myself from where I am to where I want to get to. And you've just shown a very non-threatening, very proactive way of raising your value to the organisation and showing your willingness. And I think that's ingenious. Thank you for sharing that. Because again, so much of what people do on their journey, and again, this is part of why this podcast is so valuable, is that what they see as wallpaper and the norm for somebody from the outside looking in is like, wow, that is what I needed to hear to help me. And for me, that is something I know I will tell people about, that this is something you did to shift your perception of you in the organisation as well.
And I think you have to really challenge yourself to do that as well, especially so many organisations are so flat nowadays as well, thinking about actually what spaces do I really want it to be in?
Yeah.
What decisions do I want to be part of? And it's not about kind of enforcing yourself, but it's about being strategic and how you place yourself, and identifying kind of who your key stakeholders are in the business as well, and looking for those quick wins so that you can add value quickly, and then, you know, grow your own, almost like your own profile or your own brand, so that people aren't just buying into the HR function or the people function, but they're actually buying into you as well. So it's about creating kind of that trust and loyalty.
Brilliant.
That's really important.
Because we talk about business owners and people leaders working, not just working in the business, but working on the business. But what you've spoken about here is not just working in your role, but actually working on your career and thinking about the next step and thinking ahead, and how to get there and who to network with and where to be noticed and how to, again, increase that perception of the value you bring. Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what happened? So you started taking minutes and you started to become more indispensable. And what happened?
Yeah. And then, well, things at Restless, as within lots of organisations, they change really rapidly depending on the type of funding that we've got coming in, the type of programmes and the type of work that we're delivering. So there came an opportunity where we were able to upgrade the role, and I applied for it and subsequently got it. And then I think it was about a couple of years ago now. I think it was in 2019. I became part of a group along with my colleague Gemma Graham, who's business director for Restless Development. Part of the group, which is abbreviated to WILD, but stands for Women in Leadership and Development.
Yes, I'm glad you're talking about that.
Yeah.
Again, something you mentioned, and I was blown away by the mission of this organisation.
Yeah, so it was set up and sort of chaired by Penny Lawrence, who some of you may know as the ex-COO of Oxfam, but she's also a career coach. She's worked in lots of organisations. She's really well known in the development sector. Yeah. And our kind of mission, if you like, was to carry out a piece of research around why I think it's 70% of CEOs and chairs in charities are men, when about 70% of the population that make up the workforce of charities are women. So really looking at, well, why does that happen?
Why the funnel narrows in terms of women as the seniority of roles increase.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just been a really, really interesting journey. And one of
background noise, by the way, typical timing. I think the builders are right outside my window, so apologies.
Working from home, no problem. And one of the ways in which kind of we led the group and sort of worked as a group was that we looked at these principles of what were called feminist leadership. Yes. Principles, and they were put together by ActionAid, actually. So all credit to them. And I sometimes refer to them as inclusive principles, or inclusive leadership principles. So I sometimes think the word feminist can mean different things in different contexts.
Yeah, people perceive that. And actually, just before we talk about those, because again, that for me was something I really wanted to understand, because inclusivity, everyone's talking about diversity and inclusion now, aren't they? And it's become in 2021, it's become a strategy that no longer is a policy, and thank God for it. But actually, it's not just a tick box. It's not just a policy. It's not just a statistic that we need to make sure we're getting the right balance of people. Inclusivity is about the way we conduct ourselves in our organisation, and women in leadership will really help with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's about behaviour, isn't it? And it's about unlearning, and it's about change, and all of that stuff is really, really hard. It's so much easier to have a policy that sits in your drawer and you pull it out every so often. But actually, I'm not a big fan of having a separate DEI policy, because I think actually it cuts through everything you do, and putting it separate sometimes positions it as an add-on or an extra, and it's not. Yeah,
we are who we are, and this is part of who we are anyway.
Exactly. So it was really helpful to kind of understand and learn some of the feminist leadership principles, because it kind of provided guidance in terms of how we can be more inclusive, and again, how we kind of unlearn that sort of having one single leader with that almost like a hero mentality, which, you know, we've been kind of conditioned, everybody, men and women, you don't have to be female to operate feminist leadership principles, but how we've been conditioned and almost like brought up to believe that that's how you lead. And so a lot of these principles, though, do speak to some of the kind of, I guess, stereotypical qualities that perhaps arguably you're more likely to find in a woman. So it's about nurturing. It's about using your vulnerability as a strength, talking honestly about how you're feeling, because we just know how much that can breed connectivity. You know, when we sort of break those barriers down and we are our authentic selves, which is so much easier said than done, can be incredibly powerful. And it's how we can bring people with us as well.
I love that, because, you know, there's a phrase where they talk about people, again, showing their authentic side and showing warmth and kindness, and actually wondering if that's going to be seen as weakness in a leadership role. And it doesn't have to be, because actually, if you can bring your authentic self, people buy into you more. So you create more of an inspired workforce and team anyway. But it is something, again, if we think about this hero position of a leader, that needs to evolve, that thinking, and be replaced by these 11 steps that we're talking about. But also for people to know that it's okay to bring yourself to the table. And I mean, a lot of organizations use personality profiling and things like that, but I don't think they actually tell people, be that person that you've ticked boxes about, be that person. People think they have to be someone else when they go in. So I think vulnerability and kindness are hugely underrated, and it's empowering to hear that it's a, you know, something that's being taught more and more.
Exactly. But it's not easy. Like some of the other principles, just I think there are roughly about 12 altogether. Some of them talk about, you know, harnessing your failure. And what that means is talking about where you've got things wrong and what you've learned from it, and believing that kind of the more you learn from failure, the better you will succeed. It talks about putting your ego in the passenger seat as well, which again, you kind of think, oh yeah, I've got no ego, but we all have massive egos, and you have to really sort of step aside from that. And there's a few other bits and pieces that it talks about around confidentiality, around kind of collaborative decision making, but yeah, really focusing on some of those traits it's not for the faint-hearted. It's challenging for sure.
That's fantastic. Is this something that is available out in the public domain, or is it only something that people can access if they're part of this group? Because what I'd love to do is, as people are watching this, that they can look up some of these principles for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are publishing a paper, and also we will be sharing our findings at the Bond conference, which I believe it's Bond's first ever virtual conference. And yeah, I think it's towards the end of May. I can double check the date. We'll be releasing some material at that point. And in terms of kind of restless, one of the things that we did, it was as soon as the pandemic hit actually, and our CEO was going on to paternity leave. He was going on to paternity leave for 2 months. And so instead of kind of replacing him with an interim or something, we instead had 2 of our female directors co-lead the organisation. And again, the very kind of model of co-leadership speaks a lot more to inclusivity and feminist leadership. And what I was able to do eventually, I was able to record actually a short podcast with them, which will be released as part of our research for Wild. And I definitely would recommend a listen, because it's about really kind of getting under the skin of what that felt like to be leading an organisation in crisis, in a co-lead, with, you know, small children at home, everyone else at home. And it's, a really interesting read.
And a responsibility that the chief, has left them in charge of. So pulling all that together, that'd be amazing to see. And I hope when we put this recording out, I'll be able to put the links to that, and we'll time it in line with this event as well. Amazing. And so you have 2 young girls. How do you bring what you learn out into the professional world, how do you bring that into how you parent? Have you felt things shift in the way you parent your daughters because of what you've learned?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one for me. So I sometimes feel more comfortable in a boardroom than with like than at soft play. Yeah, the parenting thing has always been a challenge, as it is for everybody I know. But as I was talking,
is there? There's no, there's rules of engagement in a boardroom, but there's no actual rules of engagement as a parent. It's so diverse.
Of course there isn't. Of course there isn't. And I'm sure everyone feels that. But certainly, like I was saying earlier, when I had my first, I thought this was going to be the making of me. This would be that moment of completion. And obviously it's wonderful having the children, but it's also wonderful having my job as well. It's so incredibly important to me. And I'm better when I'm at work, as in I'm a better mum when I'm at work. And I think what's important to me is I do have daughters, is that they see mum as a role model, as all kids do. Of course, they look at their mum like that. But I think it's important that they see me, my job is just as important as dad's, and that because my job, I've always worked internationally, has involved travel as well when we could. And so I would go away for sometimes up to 2 weeks, to somewhere that might not have the greatest internet connection, all that sort of stuff. And I think that they really kind of adapted to that and understood that that's mum's job and that's what she does. I mean, I work in the sector, so it's quite easy to explain what I'm doing, and they like the fact that we're all working towards change and social purpose. And so but of course it's a juggle, like it's a juggle all the time. And I think what we need to do as women in leadership and women who are parents is talk about the fact that you're late because your youngest just weed on your skirt. We have to be really transparent and vulnerable.
And we're recording this April 2021, coming out of hopefully the last lockdown, a whole year of pretty much all of the country working from home. And if we're going to find a silver lining, it is that the professional world has become more human. And if there's one thing that I don't want to lose, is that personable professionalism that can from time to time occur in some business relationships, but actually is becoming much more the norm now. And I really hope that allows people to be more authentic. It allows people to demonstrate kindness. It allows us to have the conversations of I'm a mum, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a partner, I'm a trustee of this charity. I am a whole being and not just what I bring to work. That's not what's important. Actually, what's important is that is the tip of the iceberg, and the rest of that supports what I can give in my role as a boss, as an employee, as a parent, and as a friend and partner out there. So hopefully that will continue. That's something I hope we don't lose.
Yeah, and I just think the sheer fact that we've all been working from home, we've had to let our work colleagues in a little bit more than perhaps we wanted to before, for all sorts of reasons. And especially in the first lockdown, where I think there were a lot of people in that category where they had a job to do, children at home, as childcare shut down completely, their partner working as well, battle of who's got the kids now, who's doing this now, and just no kind of extra support whatsoever. And I think that was a time where I had to be really vulnerable, and I certainly found it so challenging, because when I was with my kids I felt guilty that I wasn't with my staff and doing the job that I'm paid to do. And then when I was with my staff, my kids wanted my attention. They couldn't understand why I was at home but not playing with them or not doing something with them. And it was quite interesting when I sort of talked to my husband about that, how of course he found it challenging, but that feeling,
I feel the same way,
very different. That kind of really kind of gut-wrenching yeah, sort of feeling, I guess it's guilt. I don't know a better word to describe it, but that real conflict, I guess, inside
Yeah,
of just feeling that we're failing on whatever, whoever we're giving our attention to or not.
I get that. Someone, when I had my son nearly 17 years ago, somebody at work at the time said to me, £7 of baby, £70 of guilt. You know, it becomes where you can never feel like you're doing enough. And something I incorporate at work and something I encourage everyone to do is what I call the triangle of life, that we always work towards having a third of our time with our family, whether that's parents, children, loved ones, a third of our time at work, and a third of time on ourselves. And I think for me, that was the mistake I made until I learned this approach, was I thought it was half my work and half my family.
Yeah.
But where did I replenish the vessel that was then going to give back to those worlds? And it's taken best part of 10 years. But now, because I can take time to replenish the vessel, I've got more to give. And all of a sudden, and also at teaching our children and telling our employees it's okay to go for a wellness walk. It's important you have some time without any meetings and you can be mindful and reflect, or go for a workout or eat good food. All of these things that actually replenish us are going to add value back out to those worlds. And we're never going to get that balance right in a week or a month, but over a year, you know, take some time to yourself, spend time with your family on holidays. And in an environment, a working environment, I think, you know, one of the things I love about the not-for-profit sector is that your mission and your why it's in the title. It's the number one thing we talk about. Whereas in the commercial world, businesses have had to smarten up on, you know, Simon Sinek and his why. It's all the rage for the last 5-10 years. But the charity world has always done that. So for people to understand the why of an organization, helps them through when things are tough. You know, they can reconnect with what they're doing and why they're there. But it's important to have that in their own personal journey as well, you know. And I think you know, when you talked about becoming a mom and understanding that your journey had just begun actually, and that wasn't it means that you are doing the triangle and you are replenishing, and hopefully that just means everyone who touches your world can just win more and more, and most importantly that you can look back and think, you know what, I'm proud of what I'm achieving. I
mean, I think it's still always going to be a struggle though. You know, I think we talked about that guilt and those feelings that they will never go away, but what we need to do is normalize them, and we do that by talking about it a lot more, and you know, giving people space to talk about it and just and acknowledge it. But I think it's always even now, I mean, you've probably had this where I might be on a Zoom call of some sort and one of my kids walks into the room and I instantly just want them to go. And my colleagues are like saying hi to them. Like, but my colleagues don't care. Like, they think it's lovely. But it's me. Like, it's a distraction. You know, I'll lose my train of thought. And I just think, no, I need to focus on this at the moment. And actually, I can't get you a banana. Right. And so I think it's just really interesting how we have responded and adapted to this virtual world. And the struggle is real, and the struggle is always going to be there. So the best we can do as women in leadership is normalize it and talk about how we're in exactly the same boat as well.
Amazing. And if we normalize it, it will empower women of the future to go for those career moves, to go for the next promotion, to not peter out as the roles increase in seniority, because all of the challenges is part of it. We just process it differently, but it's okay. It's okay to not to be okay and to still do it anyway.
Exactly.
Amazing. Christina, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a huge pleasure and an inspiration to hear you speak and hear your journey. And hopefully we can do a part 2 after the event and hearing all about the 11 to 12 steps of women in leadership. I really look forward to hearing more, but thank you again so much, and take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Meeta.
Cheers.